Iran's ambassador to the UK has warned the Islamic Republic will respond to any threats against its oil tankers in international waters. In a tweet, Ahmadinejad said he sent a letter to International Maritime Organization expressing deep concern over endangering the safety of international navigation. Ahmadinejad added the U.S. will bear responsibility for any consequences if it takes action against the tankers. Earlier, Iran's defense minister warned the U.S. of a firm response if it continues to harass the country's ships and oil tankers in international waters. Brigadier General Amir Hatami described U.S. acts of harassment in the high seas as piracy. Now joining us for this news review is Danny Shaw, professor of Latin American and Caribbean Studies, joining us out of New York, and Ramiro Fuentes, activist and political commentator, joining us out of Los Angeles, California. Gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you both to the program. Danny, I guess we'll start there in New York with you, bud. Welcome to the program, one of our news reviews here, and your thoughts on the story.
Yeah, this is the height of U.S. imperial arrogance. They think they can stop two sovereign people, governments, from trading, from engaging in mutually beneficial trade. These 5 Iranian oil tankers carrying more than $45.5 million worth of gasoline to break the U.S.'s blockade against Venezuela. These Iranian tankers are really they're taking this trip for all of humanity. This is really this shouldn't be a showdown. This shouldn't be a news story that two countries to support one another, but U.S. hubris, imperial hubris, makes it a news story.
Thank you, Danny. And Ramiro, welcome to the program. Your initial thoughts on this?
Thank you for having me on. Just as the brother Danny mentioned, this is a clear example of U.S. imperialism in crisis. You have a Trump presidency that is backed by franking corporations, companies that make money from extracting oil from the earth in the U.S. and Alaska and North America. And they have a glut of oil that they want countries in the global south to purchase from them exclusively. And so now that Iran and Venezuela are exercising their autonomy, their sovereignty, and trading with each other, trading their own oil, trading their own commodities, they don't need the U.S. anymore. The U.S. finance capitalists are upset that Iran and Venezuela are no longer dependent on the U.S. for oil. And so I think it's an example of imperial arrogance as well as crisis within Wall Street.
Thanks, Ramiro. And Danny, that's the thing. I mean, the U.S. time and again has said that it's got issues not with the Venezuelan people. And in fact, it's always stipulated that its heart goes out to the Venezuelan people. It's got an issue with Maduro and his cronies, right? So here, if you want to be the hero right now, why not you be the one to give the fuel to the Venezuelan so-called opposition in Juan Guaido? But you're not doing that. So you're trying to actually hurt the most vulnerable people in Venezuela, depriving them of much-needed fuel for warmth and other basic necessities.
Yeah, as Ramiro said, this is punishing the everyday Venezuelan families. Yesterday was a very difficult day in Venezuela because AT&T and DirecTV cut off the signal to Venezuelan national TV as well as the international Telesur. So they've done everything to suffocate, to isolate, to strangle the Bolivarian revolution, but somehow, some way, the Bolivarian people with their leadership pushes through. The fact that Telesur is not being broadcast across Venezuela right now, and they have to use the internet or YouTube or Facebook Live, this is very difficult because a lot of homes, because of the blockade, also don't have access to the internet. This is an incredible loss. I mean, what television channel across the world has stood up more for the global south than Telesur?
And Ramiro, what goes through your head when you hear Donald Trump up there at the lectern saying we care about the Venezuelan people, just not Nicolas Maduro?
When I hear Trump saying that he cares about the Venezuelan people, I would laugh if it weren't so sad and upsetting just how ridiculous his comments are. I mean, these sanctions that the U.S. has ramped up on Venezuela affect moms. They affect poor working class mothers who are feeding their children. They affect persons with disabilities. They affect the most vulnerable in Venezuela. And so the fact that Trump likes to go up there and claim he's helping the Venezuelan people, one of the main things he can do is lift the sanctions, end the blockade, and allow Venezuela to live, to do its own thing. And he's not allowing Venezuela to do that. What Trump really cares about is the right-wing, wealthy, racist base of Venezuelans that live in South Florida who tend to vote Republican, who support the U.S. foreign policy, who support Israeli Zionist foreign policy. And at the end of the day, it's just a ploy for votes. He wants that Southern Florida right-wing Venezuelan voter base, and he clearly does not care about the Venezuelan people back home.
And Danny, that's the thing. What does Washington want in Venezuela? Because it's basically starving out the Venezuelan people with its sanctions. It doesn't want them to live. It doesn't want them to work. And obviously it doesn't want them to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. So what does it want for the Venezuelan people?
Well, what Trump wants from the Venezuelan people are their enormous oil and gas reserves and mineral reserves. Same thing that they want from the Middle East. And in many ways, Iran is the Venezuela of the Middle East, and Venezuela is the Iran of Latin America. Though they're two very different social systems, what do they have in common? They're in the crosshairs of imperialism because they have forged their own independent economic, political, and military path. And that's what Trump and his administration refuse to allow. Any country that dares to stand up ends up being blockaded and constantly under military threat.
Thank you, Danny. And Ramiro, we've got about a minute left. Your final thoughts, please.
I think while at the moment this is certainly negative news, the fact that the Trump administration is trying to block Venezuela and Iran from cooperating, I think in the long run this is a symbol that U.S. imperialism is in crisis. It's resorting to direct action, and it is no longer able to control the world the way it used to. So I think moving forward we should be optimistic about the decline of U.S. empire.
Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us on this program. Daniel Shaw, professor of Latin American and Caribbean Studies, joining us out of New York, and Ramiro Fuentes, activist and political commentator, joining us out of Los Angeles, California. Viewers, that's a wrap for this segment of your Press TV's News Review. Thank you for tuning in, and goodbye for now.